All right, guys, we're going to go ahead and do a final review thing. So this one's going to be a little bit different. There is a study guide in your lab manual. It's actually pretty good, but I'm going to go over some things that are important to study for the midterm, for the final, rather. Important things. So a big chunk of the overall grade is going to be identification of bacteria. There's a flow chart on Canvas to help you study with this. It looks something like this guy right here. It kind of lists out the different types of broad categories of bacteria. It's the same bacteria list that we have for our unknowns. Um, I will give you on your lab manual, I think it's on page 1 of your lab manual, the same list that you see on page 1 of your lab manual, which is a list of bacteria. So you'll have access to that. So you'll have all the spelling and all that stuff. Please, please, please make sure you guys do correct scientific names on the final. Otherwise, the system won't recognize it. Other key thing, we can't do italics on Canvas or on Lockdown for whatever reason. I don't know. So don't worry about that. Just make sure it's spelled correctly. There'll be a spelling list, so you can make sure it's spelled correctly. Do not abbreviate or you will lose points. Okay. So the flow chart breaks it down into these major categories. I'm going to go over these categories really quickly so you guys know them. You're either going to be sitting at a gram-negative fermenter or gram-negative non-fermenter, or you're going to be gram-positive cocci or gram-positive bacilli. And those are the 4 broad categories. So basically, I will give you an image and say, hey, which of these does it fit in? So for example, we go back to our unknown or our final exam sheet. See this one right here. So I might give you something that looks like this. I might say, hey, what is this? And you go, okay, well, this is red. This is a gram stain. This is, that reddish color, the bright pink. That must be gram-negative. And these are not bacilli, they are cocci. Therefore, the only thing they could be is gram-negative non-fermenter cocci, Moraxella catarrhalis. And you can just verify that by going, okay, well, they're oxidative, so that means they're non-fermenters. And this is their nitrate test, which lines up with the test for Moraxella catarrhalis, which is fine. I give you more than you need to identify them, but know that I always give you enough to identify them. Okay, let's look at the next organism. Okay, we can see we've got an acid-fast stain and a gram stain. We've also got a picture of a plate to help you identify it. Well, we can see that these are gram-positive. These are bacilli. So that means that we are not looking at this chart, or this chart, but this last chart down here. Well, I didn't give you guys an endospore slide, so it must not be endospore positive. So what's the next set? It gives us 2 options here, Mycobacterium smegmatis and Corynebacterium pseudodiptericum. Well, these bacteria have an acid-fast stain, because I labeled it as such for you, and it's blue. Blue means non-acid-fast, therefore it must be Corynebacterium pseudodiptericum. That's how you identify it. That's kind of the process. It's all kind of built to work around this. So make sure you guys study this chart. It's really important. People do this. Some people do flashcards. That's totally fine. Whatever helps you study best, do that. Now, other things you should be remembering to study. I know we just did a brief bit on the antibiotics and antiseptics. Same kind of things. Make sure you know an example of each of the antibiotic classes, and like the side effects and mode of action. If it's bactericidal or bacteriostatic. Same thing for the disinfectants. For the water, food, and milk lab, other than just basic vocabulary, you should be familiar with some of the diseases associated with each of these. So, what are some common diseases for water or food or milk? What do those diseases look like? I don't need like an extensive list of treatments and stuff for those diseases, with the general idea of what the disease consists of and which kind of item it falls in. Is it associated with milk? Is it associated with food? Things like that. You guys do not have to do dilution problems, which is great. So don't worry about that. You guys don't have to do any math. It's even better. Best semester ever. No math. Okay. You can also go through the study guide. Now, on top of all of this, we will need to know, the biochem and carbohydrate fermentation tests. We need to know those anyways to do the identification, but you will have a few questions based off of those questions because we don't normally do that. So make sure that you guys remember to study the carbohydrate, fermentation, and biochem tests. Don't ignore those. We normally cover those on the midterm, but of course we did not have time for that on the midterm. So we're putting them on the final, there's not going to be a ton of questions, but they're basically things that you should already know so that you can, in fact, do your identification. This is probably the most important part. So I'd start here, make sure you know this for sure, and then I'd move on to these other things. Okay. And since being able to know how to identify things ties in with carbohydrate fermentation and biochem, that's two birds with one stone if you're memorizing tests and making sure you know what all the tests entail. So there you go. That's how I'd study for the final exam. Remember, this is a 36-hour window where it's open. I'll give you guys about, I think the time thing is set at like 2 hours. And if you guys run into like a massive problem, shoot me an email. I know that problems arise sometimes at random, so just let me know if you do run into something big. For those of you with OLA accommodations, I'll be extending it individually for you. I think that there isn't something that says final exam up on Canvas yet, but there will be. So just be patient for that, and you guys will see it eventually. So if you guys have any other questions, make sure you shoot me an email, and I will talk to you guys later.